Welcome to the Craftsman Founder Podcast, hosted by Lucas Carlson. Every week, we talk to founders, entrepreneurs, and those who've made a craft out of creating companies and enterprises. Listen every week to get ideas for starting, promoting, and growing your business. There are no shortcuts, just good old-fashioned hard work and craft. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's interview.
Hello, this is Lucas Carlson from the Craftsman Founder Podcast. This week I have a very special guest for you, Adam Cheyer. He is one of the creators of Siri, one of the creators of Viv, which has been acquired by Samsung, and obviously Siri was acquired by Apple and is in everybody's iPhone. And he's a very, very special person with a very interesting background in both tech and entrepreneurship. I'm extremely proud and excited to have him on the podcast to talk with us a little bit about artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship, and his story and some of the learnings that he's taken away over the years of doing this kind of stuff. And he's been doing it for a very long time. So really excited to have you on, Adam. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Lucas.
For people that aren't as familiar with your background, can you give us a brief kind of background into it?
Sure. So I was a researcher for a number of years at SRI International, used to be called Stanford Research Institute. And my focus was on artificial intelligence and human-computer interaction. So basically, how can people interact with machines more naturally, and how can machines be smarter? And then entrepreneurship came to me a little bit later in life. I was in my 40s without ever having started a company or any idea how to do it, no business school background, nothing. But, I decided to set out and give it a try, and really glad that I did.
So that brings up a few things. One is a softball question for you, because I was curious reading about your background and SRI. Did the name Siri come out of SRI?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, the way I say it is that we chose Siri, in a sense, despite the relationship to SRI, although we're very proud of our SRI heritage. The official name for Siri actually comes from the Norwegian word for beautiful woman who will lead you to victory. And so, which I think is kind of nice. It's a Norse goddess kind of reference. But when we came up with the name, everybody had their own preferred meanings. We actually listed, we were looking for a domain name that was short, that we could get for not too much money. We were looking for a human-sounding name, but not too common. And Siri rose to the top. And so our CEO, being Norwegian-American, liked this name. For me, there were two important meanings. One is at SRI, we had a system called Iris that I had built. So for me, Iris is the mother and Siri is the daughter, and they're reverse of each other. So I like some relationship between parent and child without the juniors.
Nice.
The second meaning is Siri means secret in Swahili. And when we started the company, our website was actually stealthcompany.com with a dash. And we had a whole secret metaphor with, ninja logos and all of this. And so for me, Siri was a tip of the hat back to our Stealth Company days. And you can actually, I think the website is still up, the original Siri as stealth mode, stealthcompany.com with a dash website you can go see and just laugh at how bad it is. But that's how we started.
Thank you for that little insight. So one of my first questions is, having been in research for a long time, what did it take you personally, what was the story that transitioned you into entrepreneurship? How did you take the leap from looking into concepts like artificial intelligence and turning a company into it?
Yeah, so that I believe that in life, the purpose of life is to really optimize the gift that we've been given, the time that we have here. And so it's really, really important at any change point, when you're frustrated about something or you have a desire, it's really your obligation to kind of act on it And I do this through a whole process, which I call verbally stated goals. When I'm unhappy or I need something, I focus on that core emotion. I let it settle in my chest. And then I try to capture that emotion in words. And that becomes my mission statement. And at that point in life, I go and I tell everyone I meet, this is what I'm doing now. And I have no idea how I'm going to get there, but it's true to me. It really matters to me, this emotion. And then I say, this is what I'm going to do. So at the time, I was working at SRI on a really large research project. It was a wonderful project. It was the largest AI project in U.S. history with 400 people, $250 million over 5 years. But I had two frustrations. One was I had all these ideas that I wanted to do, and I just couldn't get them done on this project. There were politics, we were very focused, and so I was feeling stifled. So that was one emotion. The second thing was it felt like, while it was interesting research and many publications were coming out of it, some 600 publications, it wasn't going to get out into the world. When the project was over, what was going to be left was just these papers, and it wasn't going to impact people. So with these two kind of core emotions or frustrations, I turned it into a verbally stated goal, a VSG, that I said, I'm going to create 5 projects that can impact users in 2007. So that's it, 5 projects. And I would go at Christmas party, hey, Adam, what you doing? Oh, I'm doing 5 projects that can impact users. And I'm like, what? But by telling people that, it does 2 things. One is it commits me to that goal. And then the second, because I'm going to see them again next year, and they're going to say, how'd those 5 projects work out for you? The second thing is people will start to help you. So they'll say, oh, I know a guy who does this, or I have an idea, or whatever, right? So that's why verbally stated goals are so important. It commits you to something that's really true at that time in your life, and people start to help. The universe starts to help because you're putting it out there that I'm doing this, even if I have no idea how. So long answer to your question, but I was in research. I loved aspects of it, but I was frustrated. And so in 2007, in addition to my day job, I created 5 prototypes. I built systems that I could show people and try out a little bit on 5 different things. And then my verbally stated goal for 2008 was 1 major, 1 minor. So the idea was to take the best 2 out of the 5 and actually bring them into the world for real as companies. And actually 3 of the projects became companies. So Siri was my day job.
Yeah.
And then a company that's called Sentient.ai, which I can tell you about later, was my night job, so to speak, 15 hours a week. And then the third company became Change.org. And so I had helped build the first prototype for that. And now it's the largest petition platform for good, with getting close to 200 million members who use it. So that was my transition from research to getting it out. But it started with, this is important to me. What's the core emotion? I want to create things, and I want them to have impact. And that was defining.
A lot of people, when they come up with this idea of wanting to create something, they put all their eggs in one basket. They pick one thing. How'd you come up with the idea of prototyping 5 things? Not even building 5 things, but prototyping them before you even evaluated them.
Yeah, luckily I didn't read any of the business books that say focus, 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 or, I just did it my way.
Is your gut instinct?
For me at the time, as I said, I felt stifled, and that what I was working on wouldn't have impact. And the stifled part was I just need to get ideas out there. Yeah. And I just needed to create. And so I'm not saying this is the right way for everyone to do it, but at that time in my life, this was so important to me to just create. and lots of different things. And so I also have this other philosophy, which is do more than you think you can. So I say that, life is kind of like, a gas. You can always kind of put more into it, and it accommodates it. So I remember, for instance, when I was doing a master's, a lot of people would take 2 classes a semester, and they were super busy
Yep.
with those 2 classes. And, the rest of the time kind of fills in. But I'm like, I don't have the time. I'm going to take 7 or 8 classes a semester. And they're like, that's crazy. And I did my master's at UCLA in 9 months, which is normally a 3-year program. And people are like, well, how can you do it? And you're like, you just, 5 classes, 3 classes, what's the difference? Try to do more. And you usually, by setting the flag out farther and striving for it, maybe only get 80% of the way, but you get a lot farther than if you kind of go easy. So for me, I always try to push myself. Instead of saying 3 projects, which maybe I thought I could do, I'll say, I'm going to do 5. I'm going to commit to 5. And I don't know how well they'll turn out. But, it pushes me. And I really believe that whether you're doing little in your life or doing a lot, you're going to be equally stressed, equally busy. Somehow life, just the stress level kind of is pretty constant. And it's not really tied to how much you're trying or accomplishing. So try to put in more, commit to more, and go for it. And, do the best you can.
Makes sense. So what is your current verbally stated goal?
My current verbally stated goal is 2 words. It's global impact. So many people, with Siri, they say, oh, congratulations, on Siri, you must be so proud. Who knows, 200, 300, 500 million people use Siri every week, some crazy number. You must be so fulfilled. And I said, I'm extremely proud of what we did with Siri and Apple, and it comes down to a core emotion, I have a frustration that for all of its fame and glory, it's not changing people's lives in the way that I imagined it could and it would. And so people will say, I use Siri sometimes, it gets me or it doesn't get me, or my daughter speaks to it all the time, or I use it to set an alarm and do this. So it feels like at best, in some ways, it's either a kid's companion or a utility, which is useful for some number of things, but it's not important like the web browser is important or mobile phones are important. That changes lives.
Yeah.
It not only changes the end consumer lives, it changes business. Every business in the world needs a website. Every business in the world has a mobile interface or a mobile app, most businesses. And those are important channels for how they do their business. When the iPhone came out, if you remember, it only had 8 or 9 apps on it, all built by Apple. But when they opened it up, industries were transformed. Everything, education, health, enterprise, shopping, everything changed. And I said, for all that I'm proud of having moved the world forward a bit with what human-computer interaction could be like with an assistant metaphor, it's not having that impact on people's lives and on businesses that I think it can. And so now I said, when I left Apple, I said, what I do next, the core frustration is, it's kind of a legacy sort of thing. I want to move the needle in such a way, change the world, kind of envision a world, move it towards that, and then it'll be successful if every connected user is significantly changed in how they live their lives, and every connected business is significantly impacted in how they do their business. That's what I'm going for. So I came up with 5 projects, did prototypes of them, and then the idea was to do a major and a minor. Viv is clearly my major.
Is there a minor?
There is a minor, but surprisingly, to some extent, I wasn't able to get it off the ground as a company yet, because as a miner, you need to find the right co-founders. You need to, you only can play a minor role. So in a minor, I have a vision, I have a prototype, I have something that I think could be really great. I could help raise money. I could, give some guidance. I can give a working prototype to get things started, but I need to find the right co-founders who are going to believe in it and are going to make this their major, their day job.
Are you willing to share that minor with our audience?
I won't at this point,
No
but yeah. So I think it's the process of thinking and brainstorming and coming up with a number of ideas and trying them out, but having a metric and a goal. So global impact. When I came up with my 5 ideas, new ideas, you can evaluate them. Well, how much is this going to impact every connected user? How much is this going to impact every connected business? Is it big enough to have global impact?
So then, could you explain how Viv would be different than Siri? Like, how would an interaction feel different?
Sure. So for me, with Viv, what we said, and really with this idea, we said that the way people interact with computers changes every 10 years.
Right.
So think about the 80s. The dominant way was the desktop PC and Windows, right?
Yep.
And Microsoft and Intel became the dominant companies of that age. 10 years later, out came the web browser, and that changed everything, right? So it's not that you didn't use your desktop PC. You now had a complementary second paradigm. So you had to learn about hyperlinks and things like that, and HTML. But now every business in the world would publish their capabilities through a web experience. And really Google and Amazon maybe were the dominant companies that emerged from that web browser age. 10 years later, almost like clockwork, it's the smartphone.
Yep.
So the iPhone comes out, and when they open the App Store, now there's a new complementary experience. And it really has to do about contexts, right? So why do we need a mobile experience? Well, the web experience is great when you're sitting at your desk, but if you're at a bus station waiting for a bus, it'd be great if I could do something, right? So it's a new context. So if you think about it, it's been just about 10 years past the mobile phone. Next year will be the 10th anniversary of iPhone. We think a new paradigm is coming, and it's about new contexts initially. So there are times when a web browser and a smartphone are not appropriate. So, for example, I'm driving in my car, and I'm hands-free. I should not be looking at a screen. Maybe I'm washing dishes in my kitchen. Maybe I'm jogging with my smartwatch. So in all of these contexts and more, maybe I'm messaging with my friends. An app and a web browser don't fit, but an assistant that can understand my words, that can know who I am and my preferences and likes and accounts, etc., and who can execute complex tasks on my behalf, with my approval, that fits any of these experiences. And so, but the assistants of the world, including Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, they're all relatively closed and just starting to open up. But I would argue they're not opening up in a way that will have global impact, that will make the assistant be the next paradigm akin to a web browser and a smartphone. And so what Viv is we're going to go to every business in the world and say, we have an open assistant interface, and we'll give you the tools and the marketplace. Think of it in the same way they publish an app to the App Store and can sell their content and wares. They can now connect and publish their capabilities into Viv and sell them and make money. It will be a new channel. They'll have a website, they'll have a mobile experience, and they'll have an assistant experience. And that will get them to new users that they're not getting to today. And meanwhile, end users will have an assistant who can do anything they need for them, because every business in the world will be publishing their capabilities. So it's kind of like a web experience, kind of like an iPhone experience or mobile experience, Samsung smartphone experience. But the assistant experience will be a little different and a little better in certain contexts. And that's what Viv should be as important or more important than the web or mobile.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing AI adoption into kind of consumer life today? Does that question make sense?
Sure. So, technology is always changing, and it's always hard for people to keep up and catch up. And people's habits change slowly. So it's a bit of a process. No one's going to just jump on and be, super excited to use this on day one. Well, maybe a few. But for everyone to use it, it will take an adoption curve, just like the web did, just like smartphones did. But I believe this, AI in general will start to pervade more and more places. So for me, the two biggest fields or areas in AI right now are machine learning and assistance. And they're different. They're related but different. Machine learning is really optimizing everything, right? So today, your shopping experience is highly manual. Machine learning will improve it so that what you want, what you need is right there for you to buy it, et cetera, et cetera. Every single business who provides a service, they will be able to optimize that service using machine learning. So I think there's a democratization of AI. So it used to be done by just certain big companies or research labs. Now, every business out there will soon be able to improve their experience. So one example from like agriculture, we've been growing food for thousands, tens of thousands of years. But do we know how to do it best? And best means what combination of soil and fertilizer and light and water and in what pattern produces the most yield and the best flavor, because those variables matter.
Yeah.
There are companies applying machine learning now to actually understand something we've been doing for tens of thousands of years, and they will produce more and better tasting food just by varying the variables that come in, the water, the soil, the fertilizer, etc. Every industry, medicine, can now, we've got lots of books, but a machine learning will allow doctors to actually provide more personalized recommendations that perform better for a given situation and user. Every field. So machine learning is one, and then assistance is the other area where I think today, lots of people use Siri and the competitors, but I really believe in the coming 2-3 years, more and more, as these assistants can now do more, instead of just doing the 20 hardwired things that Apple or Google has coded them up to do. If you open it up like a Wikipedia and allow every expert, every business, every industry to publish the knowledge and capabilities and transactional capabilities to one assistant, then people will start to gradually use more and more.
Do you think that because Viv is part of Samsung now, and it seems like that's kind of that's probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that's going to be a centralized system that's kind of like the Google Play App Store, right? Versus kind of these decentralized, everybody could run an Apache server to build the web, a decentralized kind of communal open protocol. Do you think that that there is Viv one or the other, or kind of a hybrid of both? Where does it fit?
So you're partially right and partially wrong.
Okay.
So you are right that Viv is owned by Samsung, but Viv is a wholly owned subsidiary.
Okay.
So we're an independent, separate company, just like Samsung owns, for instance, Joyent, which created Node.js, which is one of the popular web frameworks, and it also is an Amazon AWS-like competitor. People don't really think about or know that Joyent, is actually owned by Samsung. It doesn't matter. Joyent has a business on its own, and Viv wants to operate in the same way. So will Viv come out on, the 500 million Samsung devices that come out each year that Samsung sells each year? Sure, we're going to absolutely, work over time to make Viv accessible on Samsung, but we see Viv as really a global enabler, global impact, right? So it should not just be on Samsung devices. It should be open to work on any device. And really, Viv only achieves global scale when it can handle pretty much every request from every device and situation to access every web service in the world. So developers who are out there should not be saying, I'm connecting to Viv so that I can get to the Samsung users. We will take them everywhere. Samsung devices, every device from every vendor. And we really see AI and assistantness as a utility that becomes baked into every external endpoint. So Viv, I would say, is independent, but we will leverage the push and the great, market that Samsung brings as one of the major places that we're going to roll out. In terms of centralized versus decentralized, so if you think about the web, there are lots and lots of Apache servers everywhere, which is great, but you do need a centralized index to find most of them. And that's kind of like what Google is.
Right.
Like they don't have all the actual content and sites, but they are the gateway that any end user can go to find, every site in the world, more or less. And so that's the role that Viv wants to play. Every vendor, we're not the model where we ask them to upload all of their data to us. We're not the search index or the database. We don't want to have the content. We want to have the metadata.
That's awesome.
And so that way, really, it's the web service that every company publishes. They have their content. They have their transactions. They know their users and have the user management of that. And they expose through an interface and with a web service, just like they do to their mobile app, they can now expose it to their property within Viv. And that said, and it'll be they provide a little bit of semantic metadata so that when I ask for something or make a request to Viv, Viv will know how to get that service involved. But the data lives distributed, and the content and the companies, they keep their own data. And what the assistant does is really, it's the coordinator. So I say, Viv, help me plan my trip to my uncle's, or my sister's wedding next month. Well, there's a lot of services that are involved in that. Viv will help make sure all of the things you need to get done by calling out to, maybe you need to send some flowers and, from flowers.com, or maybe you need a website to find out some clothes to wear for the wedding, and then you need to find some, travel. All of those things will be coordinated, but it's the companies themselves who provide those services, who have their content and data. And so it's really a hybrid model.
Makes total sense. If you could give some advice to somebody in their 20s or 30s who's just kind of getting into this, wants to make an impact, wants to be involved in all these changes that are happening in technology today, what advice would you give them?
So I guess the best advice I can do, it comes back to the verbally stated goal. Really focus on, when you get to a place where you want to do something different or new than you're doing right now, really focus on what's important to you. So entrepreneurship is not for everybody at every moment, right? it's a certain path. But I think if it's right for you at that moment, entrepreneurship is the best career path you can have. And that's one thing people say, wow, you've had this great life and you've done so many things. What would you have done differently? And I'd say probably nothing. But I wish I had discovered this idea of entrepreneurship maybe 20 years earlier. Because think about it. If you can get three things, it is the best job in the world. You need the right idea, you need the right co-founders, and you need other people's money. So the right idea, it has to be something you're passionate about, because it might take longer than you think to really get it out. Siri, I've been working on for 23 years or something like that. And I'm still trying with Viv, version, etc. So pick something you care about, and that can have, if it came true, could have business or world impact at a large scale. Not every idea will have those two qualities. You care about it and it matters in business. The second thing is co-founders. You need to have someone who has the vision. You need someone who can translate it into functional requirements. And you need someone who can execute and build and deliver. And sometimes you're all three. It's not that easy to have one person do all three roles. So you will need partners, and they have different skills. And it's not easy to find those.
How have you found them?
I'll answer that later, but
Sure.
Largely through luck and networking. And I make lists of the best people in this area that I've ever met. And I just keep track of them. Wow, I'm really impressed. If someone impressed me, they go on a list somewhere, and that's super, super helpful later on. And then the third is other people's money. You say, well, why other people? I have an idea, I care about it, I put aside some money, why don't I just invest myself? I feel that entrepreneurs are too biased by their own idea, and unless they can sell their idea to an unbiased person at the level that they want to give up some of their money to fund it and believe in it that much, if you can't sell your idea to someone, you're not going to be successful anyway. So it's super important to kind of validate your idea by other people's money. But if you can get those three things, the right idea, the right co-founders, and you validate it by other people's money, it's the perfect job. You have basically no boss, right? You follow the vision that you create. You hire the team, the people you've always wanted to work with and that you admire. And you work on it and you try to produce values over the time. If you fail, you fail, but you are paying yourself a reasonable salary, working with people you love and pursuing an idea that is important to you. And if you succeed, you change the world and maybe you exit financially. And, so it's really a no loss proposition. But
Yeah.
those three things are not easy.
One of the things I like about the way you think is that I've met so many entrepreneurs who have an idea that they absolutely love. But they have struggled to kind of do the other parts. They have struggled to create a great team around it, and they've struggled to find money from other people. And but they also kind of hone themselves into this one idea and believe in it so much and think that they just need to put more effort into it, when from an outsider's perspective, it's pretty clear that they need to move on to a different idea. For you, you picked 5, which really in some ways limited you because you have a set amount of time that you can put into any one of those ideas. But in other ways, you're not. It's harder to fall into that trap of spending all your time on one thing that's going to go nowhere, that nobody's ever going to invest in. That you kind of diversified that risk a little bit. Does that make sense? Or
absolutely. I mean, you learn by building a prototype and showing it to people, you learn things about your idea. And sometimes it still may be a great idea. It's just not the right time for it. Like the world may not be ready. And I often say, I've been working on Siri for 23 years. If I had tried to start it as a company anytime earlier than I did, it would have failed. right? And so there was actually I believed in the trend, the idea, but there was a trigger point, and it was the iPhone itself. When the iPhone came out in 2007, people don't remember, but at the time, no one thought the iPhone would be successful.
Yeah.
They said, oh, this is going to fail. Only phone companies can make phones, and Apple's a music player company. What does it know about phones? We looked at it and said, this is going to change everything. And it's going to have such an impact because it's so great. 2 years from now, all the telcos, the handset manufacturers, the whole industry is going to be scrambling to like reinvent themselves and compete with this thing because it just flipped the game. It's disruptive. But there are problems with the iPhone or mobile. The bandwidth was slow with 3G. The keyboard is hard to do. Every tap is difficult and slow. And I go, this Siri idea I've been working on the side forever, it helps shorten the time to task. You can get things done with less round trips, less typing. That could be just the thing for the competitors who will be trying to one-up Apple in 2 years from now, which is the time it takes to build it. You know, that's the thing they're going to be looking for. So now's the time to actually start this as a company. And then the irony, of course, is that it was Apple who bought Siri itself. So they saw that and ahead of everyone else. So sometimes having multiple ideas that you care about and you show them to people and you'll get different feedback, you'll learn things about it. And some of it might be, you know, great idea, not the right time. And, you know, in fact, when you asked me about my minor, that was also part of it. I believe in this idea. I want to pursue it. I showed it. I think the world is trending in my direction. But on my going out and trying to raise money, get the right co-founders for it, I didn't get quite the response that I saw in it, and I took away not the right time. So I kind of shelve it, be patient. There may be the right trigger point that helps me look for it.
Do you think that Alexa might be similar to the iPhone in terms of assistance, as kind of, you know, sold 5 million units, seems to be a sleeper hit, seems to be maybe in the stages where the iPhone first was, where people are kind of like, oh, well, it's kind of cool, but it's, you know, do you see that, or do you think that it's still too limiting and not the vision?
So I do think the Amazon Echo and Alexa are a pivotal moment, a trigger point moment. I think it has a great user experience, right? And a surprisingly great user experience for end consumers. So they're more, you know, the voice is beautiful. I don't know how they've done such a great job on the text-to-speech. It's the best I've ever seen. The speech and everything else is okay. But they were also the earliest and first to really have an open developer ecosystem. They have something called skills. So it started to get developers thinking about, how do I publish my capabilities through an assistant?
Yeah.
Right. So that's two important things that they've done and done first. However, I don't think the Alexa approach will elevate from utility to paradigm. And here's why. So with Alexa comes built in with a couple of behaviors. So you can say, what's the weather, set a timer, play a song.
Yeah.
Super easy, and it's great. Developers can add in capabilities into Alexa, but you have to say, Alexa, ask App 7 to do Command 4. I have to name the skill and remember the command set that's been done by that developer for that skill. So that's great, but with my little head, I can only remember 7 or 8 things, right?
Yep.
And so that means if I have to remember names and command sets rather than just asking for what I want, I'll be able to configure it to the 7 or 8 things beyond what comes out of the base Alexa, but that's it. And so it's like having a web. It's like the web only on bookmarks with no search engine. I can have 7 or 8 bookmarks, and that's it. And the problem is, if there are only 7 or 8, that's not going to drive enough business to the millions of websites out there to change every industry.
Yeah.
It's just not. There's not going to be enough users who can access it.
Yep.
And so for me, I think they've done important things on both end user side with the speaker and the great voice, and on the developer side to get them thinking and prototyping, how would I expose an assistant interface to my capability? But I don't think it's done in a way that will drive enough economic business value to those companies, and because it's too limiting for the end user. And so that's one area, and there are others problems, but I think it's a trigger point that if something like Viv could come out and do it right, so that end users can consume all of the services in a scalable way,
yeah,
people will now be more accustomed to talking to Assistant, and developers will be more accustomed to thinking about publishing, but now real business value is coming their way. So I do see Alexa as an important trigger that kind of accelerates the notion, the idea that the Assistant will be the next paradigm, the interface paradigm. But I don't think in its present form, the way Alexa's doing it now, will scale.
Well, this has been an incredibly interesting conversation. I really appreciate your time and being able to pick your brain like this. And I really hope that there's been some nuggets in here. Certainly for me, there has been, and I hope for the audience that you guys can pick up some of these things and apply them to your own life. Starting with verbally stated goals, I've used them myself as well. One of the things for me is that I love setting goals, but then the other thing that I don't know if you've also experienced this, but it's like the biggest changes in my life was also things that I never expected. So it's kind of a combination of these ambitions with the ambitions that life it kind of handed me and I never expected. Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, when I make a verbally stated goal, I never know how I'm going to get there. So I say, I'm doing this. I'm going to have global impact. Gee, now how do I do that? Right. But having that flag planted out there gets you going in the right direction, and life provides. Yep. And, and together with what you do and with what life does, you end up with all sorts of surprises along the way. But having that flag put out, that planted, a goal, I think really helps drive direction. I have one other, Great. You asked the question about advice for a 20-year-old. Yes. I'll kind of maybe close with one other thing. So, I've only been an entrepreneur for less than 10 years, right? Now, that's a long time in some ways or a short time in others. But the biggest thing that changed is my confidence. And so the one thing I would have told to my 20-year-old self is you can do it. And you should really believe you can do it. Because now it's like when I started Siri, I had never started a company. I had no idea if I could do it. No idea I could impact the world at large scale. Same with change.org. Siri has probably 300 plus million users. Change.org has close to 200 million members today. Sentient has raised 150 million and is on its way to it's impacting lives. And so now when I start Viv, I'm like, oh, of course I can impact the world on global scale. No problem. Right?
Yep.
Back then I'm like, I'm just a guy. I haven't done any of this. I can't do it. And there really is no difference. I'm the same person as I was just before. The only difference is now I'm like, oh, of course I can do it.
Yep.
Why not?
Yeah.
Right. And so having that confidence and believing in yourself and just saying, if I pick a goal that's true to myself and pursue it aggressively, I will get there. That's probably the biggest and most important thing on success. Believe that you'll do it, and you'll do it. So that would be my closing statement to my 20-year-old self.
Thank you very much. It's a great statement. So thank you for coming on the show, Adam. It's been great to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, thanks, Lucas.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Craftsman Founder Podcast with Lucas Carlson. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, craftsmanfounder.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a Craftsman Founder production. Join us next time for another edition of the Craftsman Founder Podcast.